This is the hard data I use to find pressured elk almost every day that I hunt. This past season, I found elk 8 days out of my 9-day hunt, called in 2 bulls, and shot a 304-inch 6x6. All of this on essentially what is the most pressured bull elk unit in my state. If you're tired of going the entire season seeing 0 elk, just like I did my first 2 seasons, this video is going to show you how to filter down your unit to find exactly where these elk go to hide as soon as the hunting pressure starts. So here's the deal. Once elk sense any pressure at all, they condense into these honey holes that have 3 very specific conditions. I'm going to give you these 3 conditions from this study that form these honey holes, plus 2 mindset shifts that you really need to take full advantage of these locations. Now, how do I know all of this? Hard science that most hunters ignore. This study GPS tracked 50 bulls over 8 years and mapped out exactly where they go to hide as soon as trucks hit the mountains. Elk don't vanish, but they do go into stealth mode. So let's just jump right into it. Here are the 3 conditions that form these elk honey holes. Number 1, the most important of the 3 conditions that form elk honey holes is an obvious one, and that is the area's distance to any roads. What does this mean? This means that bulls strongly avoid roads and heavily used trails. But there is an exception to this that most hunters do not take advantage of. Bull elk do avoid roads, but there were some high traffic roads that these elk seem to be magnetized to. Now this is super important. It can change the way you hunt. It certainly has changed the way I hunt. More on this in a bit. First off, we can see that elk avoid roads and trails because this study literally provides a map of where these bulls went. So let's take a look. Pause. Before I get a bunch of hate saying that I'm spot burning and giving out too much unit specific information, this study that contains all of these maps and graphs is already available free to the public. I will link it in the description below. On top of that, this study was conducted on the Starkey Experimental Forest with the purpose of gaining information on animal behavior. The tags for this unit are given out with the intent of studying elk behavior, and that's why we're doing this. So let's continue. This is a map of the unit before the season started, with the hot spots of orange being where the elk were very frequent and the green where the elk pretty much didn't go at all. I know it kind of looks like it, but this is not a topographical map and has nothing to do with elevation. These black lines are the dirt roads that run through the unit. As you can see, even before the season started, the elk avoided most of the roads pretty heavily. Now let's see the map of these bulls during the rifle season. As you can see, this map looks way different. Let me point out a few things here. The road at the top that was open during the preseason has been closed for the hunt, but they opened these dotted ATV trails. Now look where the elk went. These massive hotspots in between the dirt roads have turned mostly green. Not only did a lot of these elk shift further away from the existing dirt roads, but they adapted to the newly opened and closed roads. Now, if you want to take this information and hunt the backcountry far from roads and trails, great, you should do that. You'll probably find a lot of elk as long as you know the next 2 conditions. But most hunters like myself don't have the gear or don't have the physical ability to hunt the backcountry and, more importantly, pack out an 800-pound bull from 5 miles in the backcountry. Now, the good news is there's still plenty of bulls left around these roads if you know where to look. Plus, you get to take advantage of the mobility that these dirt roads offer. Now, if we look at the map of the elk during the season, and we split the difference between a lot of these ATV trails and dirt roads, there are hotspots of elk. For example, if we look at the bottom left section of this unit, the center of this hotspot is only about 3/4 mile away from the roads and trails. A lot of these honey holes really aren't that far away from roads and trails, and that's what I've found in my personal experience too. That's because most hunters just rarely leave the roads, which means if you want to beat the vast majority of hunters, you really only have to hike a mile or 2 in, if you know where to hike into. So yes, elk obviously avoid roads and trails, but I mentioned earlier that some roads act like elk magnets, which kind of goes against everything I just said and everything I just showed you. But I have proof, and I actually used this factor to kill my bull this year. Let me show you what I mean. Let's zoom into this bottom right hotspot. This hotspot or honey hole clearly has the most elk of any of these honey holes in the southern half of the unit. Why is that? Well, just like these other hotspots, the center is only about 3/4 mile away from the dirt roads. Nothing different. But why is there so much more red and yellow? Well, look what is just 275 yards away from this honey hole. A highway. Highway 244. Yet, this is one of the best spots on this entire unit. Okay, elk do not necessarily avoid roads and cars. They avoid the people and the hunters that come off of those roads. Now, I can't believe I'm giving this up because if this video somehow blows up past my 12 subscribers, shout out my 12 subscribers, by the way, this would negatively affect the honey holes that I hunt because a lot of them are close to highways. This single piece of information is that good, and that is that Elk are magnetized to highways because most hunters overlook them and don't hunt them. The bull I killed this year was exactly 1 mile away, straight line from a highway. And there were bulls and cows even closer. When I was gutting my bull, I could literally hear the trucks going along the highway, and I could hear bulls bugling in between me and that highway. And again, this is on one of the most pressured units in the state. 5 to 7% success rate for archery and about 10 to 9% for rifle. Now, I say this elk was only a mile away from the highway, and that's just as the crow flies. But in reality, this was a steep 2 hour off-trail, thick hike after crossing a stream, right? It's somewhere that hunters don't think to go and don't want to go, which further proves my point. It's not necessarily the roads or the highways, it's the people that come off of those roads. And since most hunters don't think to hunt near highways because they think there'd be no elk, it creates this golden honey hole, which is perfect for me because I do a lot of hunting out of my hybrid sedan. It's also worth mentioning that the spot that I killed my bull at met the other two honey hole conditions. Also, be smart here, don't park off of highways or where it's illegal or unsafe. Remember that the most dangerous part of your hunt is the time you spend on the road. To recap honey hole condition number 1, elk avoid roads and trails, and so should you. So get on your Onyx, find the trails and roads, look in the middle here, and if they meet these next two conditions, and if you look at those and think, dang, I don't know where I would park, or I don't know, there's no trailhead, I don't know where I'd start hiking in at, that's exactly why you should hunt there, because most other hunters will overlook it. Let's keep it rolling here. Number 2, the second biggest factor that determines where bull elk go when hunting pressure starts, and this is where most hunters go wrong in my opinion, and that is that bulls very strongly choose areas with very dark canopy cover and a high greenness index. What does this mean? It means that elk pretty much spend all their time during the days of hunting season under thick, dark, green cover. I know we've all seen images and videos of elk rutting and feeding on these big open meadows. Get those images out of your head. That's just not how it works on general season units. This is because elk react to hunting pressure by going nocturnal. Now, elk in a more natural state are crepuscular, meaning they are doing their feeding, moving, and business during twilight hours, sunrise, and sunset. But elk react to hunting pressure by going nocturnal. The end result of this is that elk pretty much end up doing all of their business, all of their moving and feeding at night. And they bed down well before sunrise. And they come out of the timber well after sundown. Unfortunately, this means for you that you cannot be glassing open meadows an hour after sunrise and complaining that there's no elk in your unit. That's just not how it works. Now, before we go back to the map to show you how crazy pinpoint accurate this condition is, I want to show you these graphs that really support this point. This first graph here is the canopy cover during the diurnal or daytime of the rifle season. Now, we'll cover archery here in a second too. These graphs can be a little hard to understand, but here's what you need to know. This blue line represents the elk before the season started. It starts below the 0 line and steeply slopes upward. This means that even before the season started, these elk are very unlikely to be in open terrain during the day, and very likely to be in dark canopy cover even when there's no hunting pressure. Now, this orange line is the elk during the hunting season. It starts even lower, goes steeper, and finishes higher than the blue line. This means that if it's hunting season and hunting hours and the sun is up, elk are essentially only in dark cover. So again, don't glass open meadows when the sun is out and expect to see elk. Get the image out of your head that you're going to go to this glassy knob and look over a bunch of picturesque, perfect elk habitat and see a bunch of elk.
Stop it. Get some help.
Unless you're hunting some premium unit or a ranch, that's just not how it works. A lot of hunters don't seem to take advantage of this, but you can glass open terrain like an hour before the sun rises, especially in mountainous terrain because of the ridges. Official sunrise and legal shooting light can be an hour or two before the sunlight even touches the ground. For example, this is me shooting a cow elk at about 7:30 a.m., just 10 minutes after legal shooting light had started. This is a picture of that elk about an hour later facing the east horizon. The sun still isn't up yet, but you can see and glass everything just fine, so don't wait until the sun is up. Now let's look back at this hotspot map of these bulls during the hunt because it is crazy how accurate this canopy cover and greenness factor is. Let's look at this hotspot in the bottom left nestled between two roads. Look at the shape of the orange and yellow, the really honey holes of where these elk are in this hotspot. Now look at the shape of the timber. They match each other damn near perfectly. But it's not just where the roads are. Let's jump to the top left, which is somewhat considered the backcountry of this unit. This isn't a super big unit, but this rule still applies. Look at the shape of the hotspot. Now look at the shape of the timber. Look how the orange and yellow pretty much matches the border of the timber and the meadows. You get the point. The timber and the cover is where the elk are during shooting hours. To recap, honey hole condition number 2, yes, elk avoid roads, but further within that, elk pretty much only spend their days in dark green cover. Now, this means that you need to be able to locate and hunt elk within dark timber. Now, most hunters shy away and don't know how to tackle hunting the timber, so there's less hunters there. You kind of get this double positive effect where not only is there more elk, but there's also less hunters. But how do you hunt the timber? Well, that's for a different video, but I will say this. First off, learn to call and call a lot. I would recommend the Elk Nut. Look him up on Spotify, a lot of podcasts, and also download his app. I think his app is $15 a year, but it is worth every single penny. No, I don't make any money. I'm not affiliated or sponsored with them. Hopefully in the future, I'd love to be. I cannot recommend the Elk Nut enough. His app will take you from, if you don't know how to call at all, you don't even know what I'm talking about, to a pro within like a month or two. Okay? It is that good. Second of all, learn to glass the timber. Now, this can be especially difficult because you have to learn how to stabilize your binos or your spotting scope, and it also requires intense focus for long periods of time, 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes at a time. And you're not looking for whole animals, you're looking for something as small as the flicker of an ear or an antler as it passes through a small gap in between two trees. It can be pretty tough. Also, as we've been talking about, it is critical you are glassing before sunrise, okay? And this involves a lot of hiking in the dark, and that can be pretty terrifying. I get it. I'd recommend looking up Cliff Gray on YouTube. He has a lot of good content on glassing. And lastly, what you can do is still hunting the timber. This involves you very slowly moving through bedding areas, north-facing slopes of timber, hoping to see an elk before he sees you. This is not something I'm very good at or have the patience for. I recommend Matt Hartsky with Backbone Unlimited on YouTube. As for my current strategy, feel free to copy this. This is for mid-August to mid-October. I start bugling around 4 a.m. on my way to my glassing knob. And then I glass for that hour before sunrise. Now, initially, I will check meadows because it's easier to see when it's dark out, but I'm more so focusing on the edges of the timber. And then as it gets brighter and closer to sunrise, I can glass within the timber, start grid searching within that timber. Now, once the sun peaks over the horizon, I'm basically done glassing. I start packing up. Seriously, I don't glass when the sun is up. I think it is a waste of time. In those 9 days, I probably glassed around 100 elk, and I'm just using these busted up pair of binos, okay? You don't need expensive equipment, though it will help. All right, so after the sun is up, I usually just take a nap for about an hour or two to let the thermals and the wind settle, and then after that, I move into the bedding areas or north-facing slopes and then start calling. Now, if it's before bulls have started bugling and before the rut, say like before September 5th-ish, depends on the year, but I'm just going to do cold calling. I'm going to do an advertising sequence, which is just a bunch of bull bugling and raking. If you don't know what that is, just download the Elk Nut app. He explains it perfectly. And this is actually how I called my first bull in opening morning, August 16th. I called him in to 6.5 yards, actually. If it's anytime after bulls have started bugling and the rut has started, up until like mid-October, I'm just covering ground and spamming location bugles. And this is how I located and called in the bull that I shot. Now, the later in the year it gets, the less vocal the elk get and the more you have to rely on glassing. Now, if you're primarily a glasser, you need to build your entire day around that hour before sunrise and an hour right before sundown. And I mean this to the fullest extent. If you have to sacrifice the other 22 hours in the day just to prep and make sure you're on your game for those other 2 hours, do it. Do it. Make sure you get to your glassing knob early so you can rest, get some snacks, get some drink, so that for that hour you're zoned in. Glass like your whole hunt depends on it, because it kind of does. Now, for the most part, I didn't hunt evenings at all for this elk hunt, and that's because I was still scared to hike at night, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a huge milestone on its own to be able to hike at 3 or 4 in the morning to do the morning hunts. Now, I am happy to say that I am no longer afraid to hike alone in the mountains at night at all, and that is in large part due to because a couple weeks after my elk hunt, I was hunting deer, and I was hiking at night trying to overcome this fear, and I ran into a black bear at 50 yards. And then the next night, I ran into a mountain lion at 100 yards. And why that now cured my fear of the dark and hiking at night is for a different video. I'm absolutely going to talk about that. That was a long-winded way of saying that going into the next elk season, I will definitely be testing out sitting water on evenings, especially when it's hot and the elk don't want to come out of the timber. Moving on, number 3, the third biggest factor that creates an elk honey hole is slope steepness. This means that elk use steeper terrain as a method of predator avoidance. Now, this wasn't the biggest of the three factors, but it was a clear difference during the rifle season specifically. Interestingly, though, it was not a significant factor during the archery season. I'm assuming this is the case because steepness seems to be used as somewhat as a last line of resort to avoid predators. And hunting pressure from the archery season didn't seem to affect the elk as much as rifle season did. Here is the graph for rifle season. Again, the preseason is blue and the orange is during the hunt. The upward slope of both lines indicate that elk already prefer sloped terrain. The orange line that is slightly steeper means that elk moved to more steeper terrain during the rifle season. Here is the graph for archery season. Notice how both lines are basically the same, indicating that hunting pressure did not affect this. However, it is worth noting that the bulls during the archery season already preferred much steeper terrain than the rifle season, both before and during the hunt. To recap, condition number 3, slope steepness, be prepared to hike steep terrain, not just for the hunt, but also for the pack out. This means making sure your body's conditioned for it and that you have the proper footwear. Now, while it is important to look for elk on steep terrain, specifically the north slopes that elk use to bed, I use steep terrain more as a tool to get away from other hunters because most of them don't quite understand how pivotal it is to get away from everyone else. Now that you have those 3 honey hole conditions and you know where to look, I want to give you 2 key mindset shifts. It's great that you have that information, but you need to know how to use it. Mindset shift number 1, the success of your hunt is dependent on finding a lot of bulls, not just one. When I was new to elk hunting, the idea that I had in my head was that you just go into the mountains, you see a bull, you find a bull, you shoot him, you take him home, that's it, right? There was a lot wrong with how I pictured hunting, but mainly that you just see a bull and it's a done deal. The hard, real truth is that even if you're a pro and you do this every single year, the vast majority of bulls that you hear or see, you will not end up killing and recovering. Why is this? Well, there's 2 main reasons. A, you will fail to get within shooting range of that bull without spooking it. And B, even if you do get within shooting range, you will blow a lot of your shot opportunities. Now, obviously, it's important to learn how to stalk elk, learn how to call them in, and learn how to shoot under pressure. But how do you do that? You do that by finding more elk and getting more real-world repetitions at these failure points. So mindset shift number 1, the success of your elk hunts and really your elk hunting skills is dependent on finding a lot of bulls. Mindset shift number 2, elk hunting is all about quality times quantity. It's about giving quality effort over and over again. You don't get to visit one of these honey holes and expect to find success immediately. In my opinion, in these low elk density, high hunting pressure units, you need to be calling or glassing multiple of these hotspot honey hole areas a day, every day. And you need to be doing it during prime time, which again is an hour before sunrise and possibly at sundown too. Again, this is a quality times quantity thing. Success rates in my state for general season public land elk hover around 7 to 10%. In my unit specifically during archery, only 5% of hunters will kill a bull. Most hunters I talk to out in the field give it 1 or 2 days of decent effort and then get discouraged and then call it quits. The hard truth is that if you can't wake up around 4 a.m. and hike 5 to 10 miles every single day, you're likely going to be a part of that 90+% that don't fill their freezer with elk meat. In the beginning of the video, I mentioned that my first 2 years hunting elk, I didn't find any elk at all. Now, I was giving a lot of effort, but it wasn't quality effort. And what do I mean by that? I could hike 12 miles a day, but it was on trails. And I was glassing a lot, but it was when the sun was up. I didn't know how to call, I didn't understand the wind, I was doing a lot of things wrong. I was giving a lot of effort, it was just misplaced. Now, I have the general mindset that I can just outwork everyone and that will lead me to be successful, and that usually works, but it didn't with elk hunting because you need the skill too. Again, quality times quantity. So there you have it. Those are the main 3 factors that will allow you to pick apart your unit and filter down exactly where these elk are before you even put boots on the ground. Find the pockets that have all 3 conditions, not just one. Now, how do you know that you're for sure in an elk honey hole? Elk sign, elk poop, a lot of it. I mean, the few that I've been in, probably the 4 that I've been in my unit, it is like every single step you're stepping on or over it. Some of it's fresh, some of it's old because this is areas they frequent. This is where they spent last week, the summer, last year, okay? It doesn't all need to be fresh. Now, once you find these elk, getting within range and then killing and recovering them, that's where things get pretty complex. That's for future videos. And guys, this study was 19 pages long, which I read through multiple times. There was so much great information that I just couldn't cram into one video. To generalize just a few, there was a lot of differences between the archery and rifle season as you'd expect. Archery season was late August, early September, depending on the year, and then rifle was late October. They also did a dedicated 5-day scouting period to see how the elk reacted to that before the season started. They even had a deer season, which was closer to the rut. This video could easily be 5 hours going over all of these details, but if you want just a simple list of the 7 other key takeaways that I got from this study, click the link in the description below. Also, if you are interested in one-on-one e-scouting and making a specific game plan for your next elk hunt, click the link in the description below. I'll be working with 10 people for absolutely free, so click that link. Now, if and only if I blew you away with the quality and value that this video provided, please consider dropping me a like and subscribing. As of January of 2026, I have 12 subscribers. So if you want to see more videos like this, consider being number 13. But if the video sucked and you hate my guts, please let me know why in the comments. Learning YouTube is kind of like been learning how to hunt. Very steep learning curve. Talking in front of a camera friggin' sucks. So any of your feedback is super valuable and helps me out a ton. Every day you hunt is a chance to find elk and punch your tag. But more importantly, it's a chance to learn and improve your skills and get better. Life is a game of quality effort over and over again. So I will leave you with this. Whatever you're hunting in life, do it more so that you can do it better. And then do both.
I just shot a massive bull.
I didn't bring extra socks.
22 Creedmoor. Packing out the last trip of my cow elk. Brutus, let's go, buddy. Today was a good day.